Good morning. It is November 20th, 2024. Today is Wednesday, but yesterday was Tuesday. And I started recording these videos late at night last night, like 11:30 p.m., only to realize like halfway through that none of my audio was coming in, so yeah. I just gave up and waited till the morning. So usually I'm full screen, but I'm just going to get right into it because these games were very disappointing from my end. Didn't play very well. Well, I mean, I played well at the start for most of them, but then just went downhill from there. Also, just woke up because I'm trying to squeeze these in before I do other stuff. Can I get 5 games done in 30 minutes? Probably not, but it's okay. So first game, I'm playing against Wayne. We're gonna play 3 games in a row. I start with black. D4, knight f6, c4. So in between Saturday and Tuesday, I was kind of preparing the King's Indian. Just looking over a few lines that he played against me on Saturday. So that's what I was kind of like mentally preparing myself for. He went with c4, and I thought maybe I can go into a 2 knights. I was thinking about playing a knight's tango, but I just decided to go into my King's Indian because that's what I prepared. So, pretty normal King's Indian moves. Bishop g5 is a little interesting. It's not a pin because my pawn is still there, and even if my pawn wasn't here, my bishop is defending the knight, so I'm not terribly concerned. So I didn't really know like if I really cared about this move here, or bishop g5 specifically. He goes into e4, so I know this is like almost a classical setup with c4, d4, e4, 2 knights on f3 and c3. I don't think this bishop usually comes out yet in the classical. I think it's like bishop d3 or something, but I'm like, okay, well, this should be pretty straightforward here. I played h6 just to see what he would do with the bishop, if he was going to maintain the pin by going to h4 or going to e3 or something. He goes h4, so I'm like, okay, so that's going to be potentially annoying, but I'm sure it's fine. Now I go with c5 to try to break open the center. I know e5 is usually the plan, to try to walk it this way, like that, and maybe even like this if possible. But in this position, I thought, well, you're still 2 moves away from castling, or you could castle along and go this way, right? So I didn't know which way you were castling, so I didn't quite want to lock the structure up. So that's why I went with c5, because if you against c5 and against when you play d5, I still have the opportunity to play e6 and play like a more open position, which I was totally fine with. He gets some Roxy bind kind of structure, so the d5 square is going to be a big pain point for me, but I figured I will be able to manage somehow. So I went with queen a5. I remembered that I believe it's either the 4 pawns or the same-ish. Queen a5 is an idea to try to take on e4. And of course I couldn't remember which one and if the idea would still work here, but I went for it anyway, just to see. He plays bishop d3 to defend the pawn, and then I played e6 trying to break the center. He castles, I take on d5, he takes on d5. So now we have this like symmetrical structure. E-file is open. Admittedly, this queen is not really doing much anymore. So, maybe I shouldn't have gone for this queen a5 plan to begin with. Bishop g4, just attacking the knight. He plays h3, asking my bishop what it's doing. I take, because this knight, well, more than anything, this bishop doesn't really have a retreat square, right? Like, this is covered, that's covered. This square, I want my knight to go here, because I don't really want to go like this. And even if I do go like knight a6, knight c7, then it's like even more trapped, because like, what, I have to go to e1. So I just trade it off. I bring my queen back to d8, which kind of sucks, because, what was the point of queen a5 then? So, yeah, queen a5 just wasn't a good move, turns out. He adds pressure to my f6 knight by playing knight e4, and I respond with knight bd7. And you can see the position is +2 because there's just so much pressure on this knight. And I mean, I have like not really much play on the queen side here, right? Like he has sufficient ways to stop a b5 push. But then he blunders and he plays knight takes d6. And if you want to figure out why this is a blunder, you can pause here and figure out why. But the move here for black, which I found in the game, is knight e5. Right, knight e5 attacks his queen, attacks his knight. So he's basically going to lose a piece. He plays queen f4, trying to x-ray defend, but of course this is a free bishop, so I take the bishop. So now I'm like, okay, I'm up a piece. I should be able to win this game. I just need to try to trade stuff off and not blunder anything back. Easier said than done, of course. Queen g3 hits my knight. I decided to take the pawn here on b2. In my mind, so in this position, I froze. I just like didn't know what to do here. Like everything was just like I felt like I just couldn't make a move. Like I didn't know what to play. Everything looks wrong. Like my pieces are just like all over the place. I should have just went for the easy knight b4. And if he plays a3, I'll go here. And then I'll reroute my knight like this way, for example. And then I could even play knight e8 to try to attack this knight. But I took so long to figure out a move to play here. And then I just ended up taking a pawn, which is fine, right? Like, this is a fine move. But then I realized he's just going to play rook b1 and get, like, so much pressure on my position. So I was like, okay, this is not as good as I wanted it to be up a piece, but we'll figure it out. So I played queen b6 to defend the knight, which probably not the best way to go about it. I probably should have just let him take this pawn back, right? Because now I'm basically in a pin here, and you know, if he somehow adds another attacker to this knight, it's going to be a little rough. And he kind of does with queen e5, but I have the response of knight d7. So discovered attack on the queen, which also x-ray defends the knight. He's got to move his queen again, so he played queen e7. Now my knight's under attack, and I offered a queen trade with queen d8. So you can see twice this game I've moved my queen back to d8, which is really annoying. But he declines with queen a4. Now my queen is under attack again, and I played queen b8. I could have totally played queen c7, actually, which may have been a little better, but oh well. Now he plays bishop e7, and now my rook is basically trapped. I just like didn't really see a way to really do much about it, so I just played rook e8. At the very least, I have like a small pin on his queen, right? Like, kind of. I mean, obviously this is gonna happen, but you know, whatever. But then he locks his bishop in my position with d6, and now I just feel like this game is slipping away from me very quickly. You know, things are happening for him and not for me, and my knight is still stranded on the edge of the board, not doing much. I played b6 because I thought this pawn was loose and I needed to defend it. I probably did not need to defend it. I should have just let him have it and focus on getting my knight back into the game. But easier said than done. So I played b6, rook e1, knight a4, trying to reroute my knight, threatening a small fork. But I mean, queen c6. Apparently I was supposed to play knight c3, which I did, but even though I'm attacking his rook here, obviously he's just going to move it away. I grab another pawn, and it's like, even though I'm up a piece, my piece is like way over here in the edge of the board. And it's going to take like 2-3 moves for it to come back. Now, really, I should have just rerouted it here. Would have been fine. And I could have gone like here. But for some reason, I didn't see knight b4 like at all this game. So I went back to c3. He attacks my knight again. And I counterattack with rook c8, but so he just plays queen b7, a5 to defend the pawn, which again, I probably didn't need to defend these pawns, but here we are. Yeah, rook e3 is a very strong move. It's just piling pressure on this on my queen. My queen can't even move right now because the bishop. Well, yeah, the bishop just controls everything. This position is getting worse and worse by the second. I didn't know what to play here. Like I was like running really low on time at this point, so I just played a random king h7, and now I'm basically lost. Um, Bishop h4, queen g8, getting out of the way, but then I dropped my knight, so that's always great. Rook a8, and now he's forcing a rook trade at the very least. Obviously, I'm not going to trade my queen for a rook, so I try to block with bishop f8, but then he plays bishop e7 again. I desperately just played knight d5, just trying to get my knight back in the game. Obviously, I'm going to lose it, but I mean, at this point, the game's already lost. So he takes on f8. I get my knight back to f6, and I have a fork on his rook and queen, which is cool, but that doesn't really matter, because even if I take, I'm down a bishop. I'm basically paralyzed here, and this pawn's going to promote, and I have like no play, so yeah, definitely through this game, you know, like I just like totally floundered in the middle game after like this. Like I was just, even though I'm up a piece, I just like did not know how to play afterwards for some reason. Like it was, yeah, I don't know what happened here. I just like didn't know how to play the game anymore, and then I lost. So that's pretty frustrating. Yeah. So going into the second game, we switch colors. I have the white pieces, and we get into a Sicilian. And I think the very first time we played at all, like in Brooklyn Game Night, I think he played a Sicilian. He played a Smith Mora, or I played a Smith Mora. But then he declined it with 6, and I played d5. And I think I played c4 in this position, or after his move, I think I played c4. I eventually won the game because I had like a giant space advantage, and everything just made so much sense. But yeah, so I was not expecting a Sicilian at all. So I just played knight c3. So lately I've been trying to learn the Grand Prix. Problem is I don't play the Sicilian against the Sicilian enough to like remember all the ideas very well. So I'll probably look into this a little more later. But he continues knight c6, f4, and then he plays this weird queen c7. Now, I know in different variations of the Sicilian, you can play queen c7, and it's called the Taimanov. I didn't know what to play here, because most people will play like d6 or g6, or maybe even e6. So here I was like, do I give up this pawn to develop? Like, doesn't sound right. You know, I could give up the pawn and then play e3 or d3, but yeah, I was like not really sure what to do here. The correct move is actually knight f3. I just realized I didn't have the eval. Oh, maybe let's that one. Whatever. The correct move is knight f3 because if he takes my pawn, I can just shove d4, attacking this, and then let's say it goes back to, let's say, d6. I have d5, and now I'm kicking the knight around, right? And I just have like a completely better position. Oh, I can't even play e5. That's crazy. But yeah, so I didn't see the idea of just like gambiting the pawn to push d4. But he continues relatively normally with g6, bishop g7, a6, e6. Pretty normal standard development, right? I have the Grand Prix structure with the pawns on e4. My bishop isn't outside the pawn chain, which it usually wants to be. But yeah, because I played d3 so early, because I wanted to defend this pawn right away, I didn't get a chance to play bishop c4. And we get to this position here, and he plays knight e7. So here I'm like, okay, well, I know in the past he's developed like this, where he's got knight on e7, fianchetto bishop on g7. And I was like, you know, this kind of resembles a modern attack setup. Or not a modern attack, a modern defense setup, to which I would normally play a 150 attack with bishop e3, queen d2. Now, the normal Grand Prix plan is to play queen e1 and swing it over this way to try to get an attack. But I decided to go for a 150 style attack. As I mentioned, queen e3, bishop e3, queen d2. he has knight d4, but like if he takes anything here, I'll just take back, and I don't really like. That's fine for me. Obviously, I can't really take him because then I get forked with CD. So I kind of just have to leave it there and try to go for my attack. Knight ec6. I play f5, trying to open this up and get this attack going. Castles, bishop h6. He takes on f5, which apparently is a mistake. Knight d4, knight d4, ef5. Okay. I guess the threat is f6. Interesting. Knight takes e2, knight takes e2, f6. I mean, yeah, this looks rough. But it still looks playable for black. Anyway. I just instinctively took the pawn. I didn't realize I went down a pawn here, but, you know, being down a pawn, in the middle game, if I make a mistake, I'm down a pawn, like, I'll figure it out from there. I'm sure it's fine. So my idea in this position was knight d5, threatening queen c3 check and then knight f6. But I failed to realize that queen d6 actually holds everything together. And now queen c3 doesn't work. Well, first of all, he plays knight d4. I take, he takes. But now, like, my queen is actually blocked off. My knight's hanging. So, like, this whole plan just never actually worked to begin with. I defend with bishop f3. You can't take because you're pinned. He plays f6, so now I have to move my knight away. And I kind of just made a bunch of moves for nothing. Like, the idea didn't actually work. So, I mean, it's even. I'm down a pawn, but I guess, like, I have better play because his light squared bishop kind of sucks. But, yeah, I kept playing the game. I was trying to figure out where my ideas are here. Didn't really see any. And after a couple of moves, was I worse here? Okay, knight f3 now is worse. Rook f3, b5, and he's escaping. All right, well, I played rook e1. He's going for the b5 and bishop b7 plan. I wanted to kick his knight out. He correctly takes on f3 and then plays bishop b7. So now his pawn advantage is actually being felt because he's got the bishop, and I can't really do anything about it. So you can see I'm just like randomly moving my pieces around, trying to find some kind of play. He trades off a pair of rooks. F5, I go back to e3, e8. Excuse me, rook e8. So I missed a tactic here with knight takes f5. Obviously, if he takes with the pawn, I take his rook. And I mean, if you go here, I'm taking your queen. So you kind of have to do something about it. I didn't see it. I gave him another free pawn. So he's up 2 pawns, but I still have the tactic. But this time I see it. So I'm like, okay, great. So now I'm winning again. And he plays queen d5. I saw this. I'm like, I mean, the obvious threat is mate in 1, queen g2 mate. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, if we trade queens, it should be a winning end game, right? So I was like, okay, how do I trade queens? And it took me a second to find it because I was calculating like here, there, here, here. And I'm like, do I have anything? Answer is no. I mean, queen h7, queen h6, queen h4. Queen f7. Oh, so I did have a mating net. Interesting. Okay, well, I didn't see the full follow through for queen e7, but what I played was queen e5, right? This is obviously forces the queen trade, so take. King f6, I went back, and then he played c4. I played king f3. So now I'm in a winning rook versus bishop endgame. It's 6 versus 5, but I have a stronger piece, right? And after g3, like, his bishop can't attack any of my pawns, so I figured, okay, I'm just like straight up winning. So as you'll see here, you know, I'm trying to find a way through, and I played b4, which immediately draws the game. So my idea with b4 was take, and then I go here, and I'm going to try to win the pawn back. I totally did not see bishop e6, um, which defends everything. But the plan here, according to the computer, was rook f4, and let's just say here, oh, I can go rook f8 in this position. He played d6. a4 was the move. And I mean, if you take, I'm going to win this. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't see the ideas here at all. I remember looking at the analysis, and there was an idea of playing rook d4 and then I think a4. But yeah, I just like totally missed the idea. Again, I'm running low on time, so I need to like just play moves. He plays bishop e6, and I totally missed that I could just play rook e4 check now, and like it's fine. Previously, I couldn't play it because his bishop was on f5, covering the square. But now that his bishop moved, I should have just went for this check, try to figure my way out. But I didn't see it, and I played a4 and immediately blundered the game back. This is actually a pretty sick sequence you're about to see here, and it's just a one mover for black to win the game. If you want to look for it here, you can pause. But the move here is bishop c4. And now my rook is trapped. And I saw this when he played it. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like, I actually just trapped my own rook in this game, in this endgame here, right? If I take, he takes. If I push, I mean, I'm still trapped. And if I sack, this is not a good endgame. Like, my a pawn isn't passed. He could play this, or like just push his pawn, and now I'm losing. So I got my rook trapped, and I'll just fast forward the rest of the game. I tried to shuffle, and hopefully somehow it was a draw. It was not a draw. I also blundered by taking over here, but he was gonna get a pass pawn this way, and I mean, it's just fucking okay. It's a loss. So yeah, like how frustrating to be in a winning position for 2 games and then totally blow it one way or another. But you know these things happen, and you just gotta learn and hope to not make them next time. Hopefully. Going into the third game here, I start off with a modern defense sequence. So in the first game he opened with like knight f3 and bishop g5. I was wondering if he's going to do it again or like play a similar setup. So I opened with a modern because I had something planned if he was going to play in that normal knight f3, bishop g5, or bishop f4 kind of style. But he went c4. So I'm continuing with my modern. And then he plays with 4 pawns, which is what he played against me on Saturday. So, you know, I did look at this variation. Admittedly, I only looked at one line, so you know, like I don't have a great grasp of it, but I had enough to get me going. So this is the main position, and the main move here is castles knight. Sorry. This is the main position. I do castle, and white normally plays knight f3 here, but he played bishop e3. And I was trying to figure out the difference between these two moves. The difference is actually knight g4, forcing the bishop back, because if you go here, I take. If you go here, I take here. So your only other move is back to c1, and now you just wasted time. And I can continue with like c5 or e5. c5 is better, but yeah. So I didn't figure out why bishop e3 was good or bad. So I would just continue with my normal ideas: c5, dc, dc, bishop takes, and you know. So the idea that I had in my mind, which is what I studied, is knight c6. So I played this in the game. I was expecting queen takes, rook takes, white is up a pawn. And then after something like knight f3, right, like just like the normal move, I get to play knight d7. I mean, rook d8 doesn't work because I take here, and I'll take back with the knight. Then he's going to play something like bishop e3. I get knight b4. You have to play something like long castle or rook c1. And in this position, I mean, I'm just better, right? Like, I mean, I have the open D file. I can move my knight to like C5 or, you know, somewhere else. Okay, maybe not there. But like, my position should be better, right? Because I have the open D file. I'm gonna have open lines for my bishop. This knight is causing a lot of problems. But instead of what I prepared, he played queen b3. And apparently this is not a good move. I missed a tactic here, which is 94, 94, queen a5, hitting the bishop. And if he blocks, like, well, he can't block with the queen because of this. So let's just say, I mean, if he moves a knight, I take. I don't know, maybe he plays like king f2. I have f5, getting rid of the defender of the bishop. And I mean, I just win the bishop, so. Yeah, so after queen b3, I played my usual plan, knight d7, attacking the bishop. I tried to force the issue with a4, but this was just a big mistake. And I mean, this is kind of the problem I've been having with the last week, where I just like am not realizing that white has moves to stop my plans. Like, he just plays a3 and he's fine. And moreover, like, knight b4 doesn't even work because the queen is guarding the square. So, like, what's the point? So a3, I played b6. I wanted to play bishop b7, and I knew this is defended, so I'm like, okay. He plays rook d1. I play queen c7 to step out of this potential pin here. But then you can start to see the game is slipping away from me already. Knight d5, queen b7, knight f3. Knight c5 apparently is just straight up losing because of queen b6, which he played. Knight e4, and what's the move here? Queen c6. And I can't take because of a fork. Okay. But he played b3. He didn't see the tactic, thankfully. So I trade queens, and then I played rook b8. He solidifies his knight with c5. I develop my bishop. He develops his bishop. I like kind of have a fork here. Not really. I totally thought that this was fine for some reason. But like, I don't have a recapture for this bishop. So yeah, I just had a total mental lapse here, and I just thought that this is fine. It's not fine. I'm down a piece. I blundered. So yeah, again, like, I just have a worse position. Yeah, I mean, rook d8, I'm just trying to get tempo, trying to attack some pieces. Here, I don't know why I just, like, moved my rook here. Yeah, I was already frustrated and losing, and I just was like, all right, I'm going to at least get tempo on the bishop. That's not tempo on the bishop. That's losing another piece. And you'll see here, I mean, there's nothing. It's just over. I mean, he's got an extra piece. His pawn is already on c6. He has too many pieces guarding the pawn and playing around it to get it past or just trade my shit off. So, yeah, I just lost another game. I don't know what it was against him today. Like, I just could not play good moves, which was pretty annoying. I mean, like, what to say, right? I mean, I think the big takeaway is, like, a5 really messed my position up. There wasn't actually a good plan around this move, or like the idea that I wanted to go for doesn't actually work because he can stop it for one, and for two, I mean, his queen was on b3 to begin with, so like this would never work. So yeah, it was just really bad on my part. Alrighty, going into the next two games, which is kind of like the rest of what I played that day. I played 2 games against Emmanuel. He showed us his chess.com profile. We had a new guy, Darvin, I think his name was. He was relatively new. He was new to the club, and then he was talking to Emmanuel, and somehow they were talking about his chess.com profile, and it turns out he's like 1600 rapid. I was like, holy shit, what the hell? And for reference, I'm like almost at 1500 rapid. Granted, I don't play as seriously or like well, actually, I don't know how much he plays, but I don't play quite as seriously online, so I think that's part of it. But I mean, like, damn, he's 1600. Like, shit, I could be 1600 if I wanted to. And I don't mean that like jokingly. Like, I seriously think I can hit 1600 on chess.com if I like played every game seriously and was really going at it. But I usually just play to like, like I kind of play to make the motions, I feel like, which is not good, but that's another story. So going into the game against Emmanuel, I'm starting off with black just because that's what was already set up when I was sitting. We get e4. I don't remember if I've played a Caro-Kann against Emmanuel. He also plays d4 mostly, I feel like, so this was a bit of a surprise to me. He was saying like, oh, I just want to play something different, which I totally understand. I am like that all the time. One of my biggest strengths in general is that I'm a jack of all trades, so I can learn a lot of different things pretty quickly and get to a decent level really quickly. But I always struggle to like get really good at one specific thing, which obviously is not good, but whatever. So he plays the normal d4, d5, and then he plays like into a mainline classical Caro-Kann with knight c3. So against this, my idea is to take on e4 and then play knight f6 and see if he'll go into a Tartakower. Most people, when I play online, do play into the Tartakower, which would be take. What I don't like seeing is knight g3, because against knight g3, like, you get this, or you would get stuff like this, or maybe not that exactly, but like white can expand on the on the king side very quickly in the mainline classical, which I really don't want to get into, but obviously we'll have to see what he does, right? So knight f6 is my move, and then he goes back to c3, which I thought was really weird. I feel like he was wasting a little bit of time, but whatever. I played bishop g4. I'm attacking his queen. I'm trying to induce either a bishop or a knight move. If he plays knight c3, I mean, I'll just continue developing, right? But if he plays what he played in the game, bishop e2, I was just going to take, right? In the Caro-Kann and in the French, the light squared bishop is the bad bishop. So if you trade it off, then that's great. Fantastic. So e6, just putting pawns on light squares since I traded off my light squared bishop. a3, I was just like, sure, whatever. Bishop e7, castle, h3. I didn't think these moves were totally necessary. Like, stopping knight g4 is not that important. Stopping bishop b4 is not that important. So, like, I was just like, sure, I'm just gaining time to develop. Knight d7, bishop e3. And then I played this move, knight d5, centralizing my knight. It's well supported. If he takes, I can transform the pawn structure either ed or cd, both of which are totally fine and have their merits. So that's what happened in the game. So knight d5. I decided to play ed. So we have a symmetrical pawn structure, and usually I don't like symmetrical pawn structures, but with my track record against him, I thought I could outplay him in the end game, just by like doubling up rooks, getting the gun with the queen on e7, or even the queen on e8. But I was thinking rook e8, rook e8, rook e6, queen d7, rook a e1, and then, or sorry, rook a8. And I have the gun, I have total control of the e-file, and I'll figure it out from there. So that's kind of what we go for. We kind of shuffle our knights around. I move my bishop out of the way so I can get my queen, or I guess more so my rook to e6 first, and then queen e7, and then this. He's threatening to take my bishop. I played queen c7. Vague idea here, maybe use something, which I guess h3 kind of like doesn't make him lose a pawn now. So I guess maybe that was cool, but whatever. So he takes my bishop, I take the queen. Queen d2, rook e6, and I'll just fast forward a little bit here. I rerouted my knight to d7 to try to chase the bishop away. Probably not the best way to go about it, but this position is very dry. You're going to see a bunch of zeros, and we trade rooks. I take it back with the queen. All right, notably, taking with the queen is better because if I take with the pawn, now this pawn is backwards, and I have a really hard time pushing e5 after just like a simple. Oh wait, what? Oh, it's bishop singing. Okay, so let's just say here, and I guess now I have or h5 is the move. Okay, sure, but at any rate, like now I have a really hard time pushing e5 because he's just got like 3 defenders. I only have 2, or sorry, 3 attack. Yeah, three defenders. I only have 2 attackers. I'll never really be able to push e5 unless I somehow find a way to use my queen to infiltrate and distract one of his pieces. But like that doesn't look possible in this position, right? Like my only real idea here is to attack the b2 pawn, but that obviously is defended, so his queen just stays there. Maybe I can offer a queen trade, but that doesn't look like a good transformation either. So I kind of knew, but yeah, like playing f takes e6 was probably a bad move. So I took back with the queen, and you're going to see a bit more shuffling. Until here, he offers a queen trade. I decided to accept it because what I saw was king takes g5. Okay, I have, probably about equal amount of space, all things considered. I can reroute my knight and get into here. He can't touch any of my pawns on the queen side. And I can not very easily, but I can eventually reroute my knight to kind of like get into his position and try to make some problems happen. So that's what I thought. Bishop e5. I played f6, attacking his bishop. It's defended by the knight. And then he played g4. I totally missed g4. Computer says it's fine, right? Yeah, I totally missed g4. I can't move my knight because then I lose the pawn. If I move my king, right? So computer says king f7, but I thought this wasn't that good because if I go king f7, he takes first, and then he gets this pass pawn. And I wasn't totally sure that this was a good idea. I guess b6 kind of just like cuts him off completely. And now he's just going to like slowly make plans here. But I didn't want to give him this pass pawn. I thought this would not be good for me. But yeah, apparently I can actually just prevent him from really doing anything here. This is the line that the computer wants me to go through. That's crazy. All right. But yeah, intuitively, I didn't want him to have this pawn over here. So I didn't go for it. So what I went for in the game, excuse me, was taking here first. He has to take back. I take on d4. He takes back with the king, which is smarter. And so here we're running a little bit low on time. I think we're about a minute each. So I'm like, okay, this game should be pretty dead. Let me just prevent him from infiltrating with his king and play b6. And apparently this is a blunder because of king e5, and I can't actually get my king to stop his king from gobbling everything. So I would need to race him probably and take these pawns and push. But I guess let's try to calculate this here. So take a second and pause. I'm going to calculate, and I'll see you after you figure out who wins the pawn race here. I mean, it's probably white, but let's just see. Okay, so if you've calculated it all, white is obviously winning because if I want to go for the pawn race, so black to move, right? So now let's count. 1. So this is how I calculate pawn races. I don't know if this will be instructive for anyone watching, but who wins, who promotes first, right? Obviously, I can't stop his king from gobbling all my pawns. He can't stop my king from gobbling his pawns. I need to promote this pawn. Oops. I need to promote this pawn, and he needs to promote the B pawn. Because my pawns will block anything that comes forward immediately, he needs to gobble both. And once he gobbles both, the B pawn is the one that has the red carpet. The A pawn is blocked by the king when it's over here, so he has to push this one, and it takes the same amount of time because before. So let's count how I would in the game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It takes him 7 moves to promote. For me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It takes me 8 moves to promote. So on the 7th move, he'll be here with the queen, and my pawn will be on G2, and my king is on H3. So he can probably find ways to give me checks and eventually stop the pawn. And moreover, if you can imagine that situation, his queen is on B8, my pawn is on G2, my king is on H3. You can imagine a situation where he gives me a check and finds his way, one way or another, to get to... well, actually, you can... I guess depending on where I go, you can actually just trade this pawn, like using his queen, and then just promote the second pawn. And I can't stop that either. So I'll just put it on the board so you can see. Right, so this would be the position. And I mean, one way or another, like I've been saying, you can probably find ways to give me checks. Queen b6 is the move, which makes sense. Right, and now you can probably just like push this. If I ever promote, I mean, if I push here, you take with the queen. And if I ever promote, you just trade it off, go here, and I'm still losing because this is going to go. All right, so that was the whole idea. Oops. So, sorry. He played b6. I played b6, but then he played c4, which blunders back. So I take, obviously. He takes with the king, and now my king gets into the game. And in this position, I'm trying to infiltrate with king f5. Again, I want to take this pawn and promote. I have this nice little structure here, so that cuts off all these squares, meaning his king would need to get to e5 to, to gobble my pawns. He can't get to e5. He needs to stop me from going here. But after king e5, b4, b5, this is probably not so necessary. I probably could have just stuck with like a5 or c5 and just traded. But I wanted to freeze all of his pawns and put him in zugzwang. So he can't push the h pawn, or sorry, the a pawn. He can't push the a pawn because I'm going to take and promote. Can't push this pawn because I take. Can't push this pawn because I'm going to take. And if you stop me here, it's white's move. Try to stop me. I am going to gobble this. Your king is caught off. I'm going to go this way and probably win another pawn. So, yeah, so he goes this way, trying to race me again. But again, I had calculated and I win the pawn race in this situation. Probably one of the more resilient moves is king e2. But then I can sneak in this way. So it's probably lost either way. I mean, computer says it's lost, but yeah, he played king d4, and I saw, again, I calculated, okay, I win the pawn race, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I mean, he's way too slow. So he tries to go this way. Oh yeah, I did calculate this pawn race as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he's one move too slow. Also, his king is going to be on g7 at the end of the day. At the end of all this, and I promote with check, so he doesn't really get like 7. And that's what we get here. And I just need to make sure this pawn doesn't promote. So I played queen g8 just to cut the king off, and he can't ever push this pawn. And very slowly I will just run over here. I can grab these pawns. I can even do like queen and king mate, but I mean, I just wanted to just like push the pawns, get another queen, just ladder mate him. So this was the win of the day for me, which is sad to say because I just spoiled that I'm going to lose the next game. Yeah, I mean, this one was overall like just dead zeros until the end game where I messed up with b6, but he didn't capitalize and played c4. If he played king e5, then I'm losing, which I should have seen because my king is so not active, but oh well. Let's get into the last game of the day here, or I guess you could say of the night. So I have the white pieces. And I couldn't remember if I've played a Kali against him, so that's what I go for. And we get this position here. So I kick his bishop away. And actually, I should note that against these bishop f4 and bishop g5, bishop f5 and bishop g4 lines in the Kali, you need to switch your game plan from trying to go knight e5 to pushing c4 and just playing a position with like two fan-kettled bishops against the king. I guess they'd be over here, but yeah, because if you trade off one of the knights as black, it's much harder to actually force e5 onto the board, I think. But anyway, so he trades bishop d6. I mean, there's no pawn here for him to take, so it's like whatever. H3 is always a useful move in the Kali because it stops bishop b4, or if his knight was here, he could not play knight b4 anymore. Castle rook c1, preparing c4, and he very smartly plays e5, trying to break the center open. Take, and here I was like thinking, am I really forced to trade here? You know, do I have to really just like take, or take? I'm like, is that really necessary? Like, what if I don't take? What's my move here, right? So I was like trying to figure out what is my move. I don't really want to give him the bishop because I have the bishop pair, so like I would probably play bishop e2. But yeah, I wasn't totally enthused by that position either. So I just traded. We traded, played rook b1 to cover queen b2 ideas. And here I'm like, okay, well, knight e4. I'm like, damn, we're really going into another pawn endgame, huh? Like rook and pawns or something. I'm like, is this really where we're going? I was really like trying to find a move where I wouldn't have to go into a pawn endgame. Computer says it's dead zeros with bishop takes e4, so that's a nice little thing. But in the end, I'm like, all right, fine, let's go into another endgame. Now here, I played rook e1 just to make a move. And then I offered a queen trade. I mean, I beat him in the last pawn endgame, so I figured I could beat him in another one, right? What I was kind of hoping for, actually, was that he would take here. Maybe he would play rook e1 or rook e8. I was kind of hoping to get this pawn structure, and this is a Carlsbad pawn structure, where we have like this like diagonal of pawns, and they're kind of touching on, like, they're in front of each other at some point, usually in the center. You can get this in the Carl Khan, for example, right? You can see c6, d5. And I'm sure there are some other openings you get this in, but I don't know them. And I knew the plan in the Carlsbad structure is to push these pawns. You get a little minority attack to try to mess up his pawn structure. So something like, let's just say, it's his move, so let's make a random move. Right, you want to get something like this. You obviously, black doesn't want to take because like that just separates this pawn. But then after something like this, the pawn here is backwards, so now you can try to attack it. I guess in this exact position, I would probably play a7, rook a7, rook b7. But you get the idea, right? So like something like this. Now, right, and now you try to play this position against the backwards pawn from the minority attack. That's what I was hoping for. Rook e8, and In the end, I decided, all right, you know what? I'm just going to trade with you. You know, you can't take here because you lose your rook. Oops, because you lose your rook. So I'm like, all right, fine. So he takes with the rook, which for some reason I was mildly surprised about. But then I'm like, well, I mean, what else is he going to do, right? So I played c4. Again, you can't take because you're pinned. So he plays king f8. I take. He takes with the rook, which I was like, okay. And then I decide to take and give him an isolated pawn, which is advantageous. Like, it's not winning, but now he has this giant weakness. My pawns are very nicely together on two different islands, and now play is going to revolve around this pawn. So I started with rook d1. He has to defend it. Then I played rook c1, and now I'm threatening to infiltrate to c7. So he plays rook e7. And again, I'm going to fast forward a bit because I'm just trying to get all of my, well, my two pieces, my king and my rook, onto pressuring the d5 pawn. He plays king e5 to defend. And now, like, even though it's +2, it's not so clear how to make progress. I did see rook c8, and I probably should have went for this, but I figured he would go here and then this, and I guess I am winning a pawn here, huh? Okay. But yeah, I didn't see rook c8 to infiltrate for some reason. My idea here was to actually prevent his pawns from pushing and somehow bait out the move b6 while my pawn is on b5 so that I can play rook c6 and just cut his king off completely. So when I played b5, he played b6 to try to like stop my pawn from going. I think he actually should have just let me push all the way and then lock it like this, because now I don't have the c6 square anymore to do this. But yeah, after he played b6, I was really happy because I get rook c6. He plays king f7. I play a4 to keep everything together. Probably not totally necessary because he can't actually get over here. But I'm like, okay, now my position is better. King g7, I'm infiltrating with king e5. I'm going to threaten to gobble all these pawns. He pushes. I take it, and now he's trying to get up his d pawn to be like a runaway pawn. And I didn't calculate per se, but my feeling was that if I try to grab one more pawn, and then I try to chase with the king, I feel like he would get counterplay on my pawns, while I'm taking so much time to win this pawn back. It turns out fg5 is totally fine, but in the game I played rook c2, d3, rook d2. He takes on f4, but I figure that's fine, right? I need two moves to, like, technically need one move to get to his pawn, but I decided to take this pawn on the way to get to this pawn. He gets one more move with this king, but it's still fine because I'm going to take, and now I'm up 2 pawns. And here, I'm trying to push my pawns. I'm making progress. And here's where things went wrong. So I played rook d4 defending the a pawn. He plays rook a3. And so here's the context. I have 20 seconds on my clock. He has 4. Okay, he has 4 seconds on the clock. For some reason, my brain was like, do I want to save the a pawn or the h pawn? What do I want to do here? So I sat there for like 20 seconds thinking about which pawn I want to move. And then when I made my move, I looked over at the clock and I flagged. So this was a completely winning endgame, and I flagged with 20 seconds on the clock, and he had 4 seconds. And like, I cannot tell you how annoyed I am that I'd lost this game. Like, that was just unacceptable, really. Like, I should not be losing a game on time when I'm up 16 seconds when he has 4 seconds. Like, that is not okay. Like, that is 100% not okay. But it is what it is. So as you can see from today's games, I am very upset. Well, sorry, yesterday's games. I was really upset. Like the 3 losses to Wayne, like sure, like he's just better than me, right? And I'm trying to learn a new opening again for some goddamn reason. Uh, but like that's just a skill issue, right? That's just skill diff. But this game against Emmanuel, like I was winning and he played a fine game. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to insult him. I'm more so mad at myself that I just flagged for no goddamn reason. But it is what it is. Yeah, so I should also mention um, I've been trying this other like mini experiment where I actually just don't play that much chess. I don't play that much chess throughout the week just to see how it goes. Because previously, I would be spending like almost all my free time just grinding out games, grinding out puzzles, reading a book, this and that. But then, it just like I felt like I was getting too deep into the forest, and I was kind of like losing. I don't know how to describe it very well, but I felt like I was losing sight of I really don't know how to describe it, but I guess the main idea is that like if you do something too much, you kind of lose your grasp on what is fundamentally right and sound. Uh, you kind of like get too into your head, and then that causes other problems. I felt like that's what was happening to me. So my experiment was let me just not play chess as much, keep myself with a fresh mind. Hopefully not a rusty mind because I'm not playing as much. But um, that was the idea that I had in my head. I'm trying that out. I think it's going fine. I think my real issues are just over the board and just trying to play ice cold and play like a robot where like I don't have emotions. And I mean play like a robot, not in the sense of like play with stockfish or using stockfish, but you know, just be emotionless, make the moves because they are the right moves, and don't be nervous about um like whatever else is going on in my head, right? Just get rid of my nerves, get rid of like emotion from potentially losing or potentially winning, and just play the right moves and just trust my intuition more than anything. Um, I know my intuition is good, especially when I play online, but there's some weird disconnect between playing online and playing over the board where I don't have the same mentality. So overall, I think that's just the biggest thing. I don't know if playing more chess is supposed to help or playing less chess or something, but yeah, I mean, as frustrating as these losses are, they are what they are. So I'll leave you with that. Have a good day, and I will see you on Saturday.